life's hard as it is. And if you add alcohol to the mix, all it is an amplifier. For many of us who are struggling with mental health issues, suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety, adding alcohol to the mix just amplifies all of that. It's like adding gasoline to a flame. I think it's terrifying, the pressure that people have now to participate in standard social drinking. Everywhere we look, it is acceptable and encouraged to deal with your stressful day with a drink at the end of the day. And that message is being conveyed more and more to our young people and to our teenagers. And all it takes is traveling down that path that we are losing more and more youth to alcoholism, to addiction, to harder drugs such as crystal meth. And it has hit home for so many of us. It breaks my heart to scroll through Facebook and see that another one of my friends have overdosed. And it's happening more and more frequently. I hope that my story can have the kind of impact that hearing my parents' stories growing up did for me. I think I was really lucky to have all the information and the knowledge and to still make the wrong decisions but be able to get back on the right path just a little bit sooner. I grew up in an AA family. I was raised by parents that educated me and gave me all the information possible about the risks of alcoholism. I knew that because of my genetics and because of my family history that I had a way higher risk of becoming an alcoholic. Needless to say, that didn't stop me from starting drinking at a young age. By the time I was 15, I'd been drunk, had my first blackout, my first disaster of a night. By the time I was 17, I was attending parties on a regular basis. And when I was 19, in my last semester of high school, I found every possible avenue that I could continue drinking. And unfortunately, it completely impacted my education, my ability to learn and participate in class. And typically, I was making such an effort to focus on how drunk I could possibly get on a regular basis that I would roll into my fourth period class half cut, much to the dismay of my English teacher. By the time I graduated high school, and not long after, I got into the car business, which was an amazing career opportunity for me, one that I had never ever considered, but as soon as I got into it, I was hooked. I loved the lifestyle and I loved the ability to have the kind of freedom I wanted to do what I wanted. And being that young and having a little bit of a higher income than what would be typically anticipated of your average high school graduate, I ended up putting myself into a lot of at-risk situations, as well as focusing on drinking every weekend. And eventually every weekend became every weekend and 1 or 2 nights a week, or every bad day at the office, or whatever excuse I could think of. Eventually, I became so focused on making drinking my priority that I created a job for myself in the bar industry by approaching the owner of one of the local bars in Saskatoon and saying, "Hey, I know you don't have a job for this, but I want to come work at your bar and I want to do this and I want to do promotions and I want to be paid like this. And as a salesperson, I was able to pitch my opportunity or my position, and I got hired on, and then I got a bar tab. And boy, did I use that bar tab, and I did not use it for buying drinks for my friends. I drank and I drank and I drank and I drank, and I drank away my paycheck, and I would drink away my ability to pay rent. And I would basically find a way to go out every single night of the week. I'd spend 2 or 3 nights going to one bar, and then I would find the hot spot every single other night. And eventually this just became a pattern. I maybe would give myself, if I was lucky, 1 night off a week to not drink. And the rest of the times I would stay up all night. I'd finish my night off stuffing my face at Denny's or McDonald's and sleeping the majority of the day. I'd wake up, watch movies, get ready for work, go party away, and rinse, repeat, and recycle over and over again. And I didn't see the dangers in that, nor did I realize that my tolerance to alcohol was going up and up and up as time progressed. Eventually to the point where I was able to drink so much alcohol, and of course I mixed it with so much Red Bull, that I usually wasn't aware how drunk I actually was until it was too late. I had a couple instances where I did overdose on alcohol, and I stopped breathing, ended up being rushed to the hospital, getting rebalanced with IV fluid, having had too much time pass for them to even pump my stomach. But they just said, we have to ride it out and see how she does. Her blood alcohol level's so high. And I remember operating in some sort of fog. Nothing seemed really clear to me by the end of my drinking career. Everything just seemed like a haze. And all of a sudden things started to go quicker. After my last overdose, I remember going home from the hospital and trying to talk to the guy I was seeing at the time that I lived with, and him just freaking out on me. And I don't remember the words that were said or why he was so upset with me, but odds are probably because he was done and fed up with my shit and fed up with my drinking because I had absolutely no control. I ended up driving out to his mom's place and talking to her and having her draw me a map to go visit a family friend. And I ended up at the wrong house, half drunk, and ended up getting arrested for the first and last time in my life, hopefully. I spent the night, overnight, in a jail cell where my mom had to pick me up. And I remember my mom coming and picking me up and telling me that my ex was leaving me, that I'd lost my job, and that I needed to come home. I wasn't really clear on what was really happening. It didn't seem real to me. I had been dating this person who had by all means suggested that they wanted to spend a lot of time with me, maybe have a future with me, and all of a sudden, the place I'd lived in, the person I had a relationship with, and the place I'd been working for the last year was all gone, and here I was, 21 years old, getting a ride home with my mother, and coming home to my parents' house at that age, and I was so confused and disappointed and lost. And I spent probably the next 2 or 3 days in this mind-numbing fog trying to figure out what I was going to do. And the first morning was December 7th, 2009. I woke up and I talked to my dad and my mom, and I just knew I couldn't drink anymore. I knew that it wasn't an option to drink anymore. I legitimately felt as though I had nothing, and I was disgusted with myself. So I accepted that I didn't have a job at the time, and I just knew that I needed to focus on getting healthy. So I started journaling. I started trying to take care of myself and eating real food, fruits and vegetables that I hadn't probably touched in months. And then I got connected with mental health and addiction services and started seeing a counselor on a weekly basis, and ended up getting involved with the Women's Anger and Self-Esteem group, who worked with me to redevelop who I was and what mattered to me and my identity as a person. And one of those things that I ended up realizing is that being able to experience a sober, genuine lifestyle was so vital to me and so important to me that I decided that was going to be one of my main goals. And so I made that commitment to myself. I was not going to drink or do any form of drugs. And I struggled on that path, but continued regardless of the ups and downs, regardless of the impact that it had in my life. And I started to see a whole new life develop ahead of me. I got back into the car business. I worked my way up in my career and eventually worked my way into management position. And I started to see my relationships glow and grow around me. I started to build stronger friendships. And I finally felt like my role as being one of the oldest cousins in my family, that I could feel like the role of role model that had been bestowed upon me or been told that I needed to be, was something that I felt I could be, that I could lead by example. And now it's December 2019, and I am 10 years sober, and I am so proud of myself and how far I've come. But the one thing that I wanted to remind each and every one of you, that it just starts with one day and saying, I don't want to do this anymore. And all you have to do is make it through that one day. And each day starts to come afterwards. And eventually you look back and you go, holy shit, it's been 10 years. Thanks. My name is Keely, and this is Top Way One.